Hey everybody, today I'm going to review the AST wire clamp tool, which is a specialized accessory designed to work along with your soldering iron. Now that could be a cordless model, a corded model, or even a butane model like this Portasol. And if you have something like this along with the wire clamp tool, then that means that your wire repairs are going to be extremely quick and you don't need to be near a power source. Now the good thing about having a wire clamp tool like this is the fact that it really doubles as a second set of hands. There's two different spring-loaded clamps. You can install two wires in just a matter of seconds, solder them together, and then remove them just as quickly. Now what I want to do in this video is really go over the different features that they have built into this. We're going to see how it compares to a bench mount unit, and we're going to see how it actually performs. Here's a closer look at the tool, and I do want to point out that it has three major components. Now you can take this completely apart, and we'll start out down here at the bottom. That is a very strong, very heavy-duty magnetic base. Then we have a 6-inch flexible arm extension in the center. And then finally at the top is going to be the clamp mechanism. Here's a closer look at the clamp on the top, and I do want to point out that the left and the right jaw can open and shut independently. They don't have the same spring mechanism, and each one can open and shut on its own. Now to show you how easy it is to install a wire in this, we'll take a piece of wire, line it up with the clamp, and then release it, and now it's locked into place. If we had a second wire, we could do the same thing on the other side, and then we'd be ready to solder. Now when you're using this, there may be times where you don't need the 6-inch flexible cable, and everything does unscrew apart. Now what you want to keep in mind, there is a post coming out of the bottom of the actual clamp, and that will screw into the magnetic base. But when we take a look at the magnetic base, you can also see a post sticking up from there. In order to remove that, you will need to use a standard 1/8-inch hex key. You can slip that right in the end, unscrew it, and then you'll be able to connect the actual clamp with the base. Now the only thing that I don't really like about this unit is going to be that flexible cable, because it does move a little bit. To show you what I mean by that, let's say we bend this up at a 90-degree angle. Right now is where I would want it to stop. But let's say I release it, it's going to move a little bit on me, a couple inches. So that could cause a big problem, especially if you're dealing with very short wires or something very precise. So you do want to keep in mind when you position this, in order to get it at that 90-degree angle, you might have to bend it back a little bit more, and then as you release the tension, it's going to stop where you originally wanted it to. One very good quality of the clamp at the top is the fact that it is made out of cast aluminum, and it's going to be impervious to heat. So in this case, I have a fully heated up Portasol. When I press it right against it, you can see no smoke forming and no burn marks because it is metal on metal contact. And really the only portion of this that would run the risk of accidentally getting burnt would be the rubberized coating on the flexible arm. So as long as you keep your soldering iron away from that, you should never have a problem with it. When we compare the AST to some other varieties of wire holders, we can see the advantages and disadvantages of each. Now this variety is known as the helping hands. It does work well as far as a bench mount, but the problem is going to come if you're working, let's say, underneath a dash or maybe even in an engine bay. It does not have a magnetic base, it's very large, and it's very awkward. The other problem with this variety, the clamps are very hard to tighten up, and it's kind of difficult to adjust. So that's where this would be much faster, and it's also going to work in the situations where the regular benchtop model would not work. The other thing to keep in mind, let's say you don't want to use the 6-inch flexible extension. If you screw the top of it directly into the base, it becomes a very compact tool that is much smaller than a standard pair of helping hands. And when we compare it to just a standard wire wrapped in a loop with two alligator clamps soldered on, this is something that most people would use, and it's very cheap to make. The problem is, it does flex around on you. It's very hard to get wires to line up, and you also run an extreme risk of burning yourself. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the wire clamp tool to hold the wires in place while I make different solder connections. Now you do want to keep in mind, because it does have that magnetic base, it will stick to any metal surface, just like this vise. It's going to hold it in place very well, and then the flexible arm will let you position the clamp wherever you want it. Now in this case, I'll position it so the camera can see the connection. When I let go, you can see it will be held in place. We'll go ahead and strip two wires now, install them in this, and then make a connection. Our first connection is going to be with 12 gauge stranded wire. I'm going to tin each one of these separately and then solder them together. So there you go, just that fast we were able to tin both the wires and then solder them together, and they didn't move around on us. Now using some 16 gauge stranded wire, we'll go ahead and cross them together and then solder the joint. And taking a look at this one, it also has a very good joint. We were able to complete it very quickly. Now finally, using this 16 gauge stranded wire, I'm going to press the strands together, twist them together, and then go ahead and solder the joint. And once again, we can make a very clean connection very quickly because the wires are not moving around and the clamp holds them securely in place. So now you've seen the AST wire clamp tool for yourself. Now overall it feels extremely well built. I really like the clamps on the top and the great retention that they have as far as removing and installing wires. They don't let go and they hold everything in place. And then that magnetic base is extremely powerful. Now that being said, you do want to keep in mind not to use this around your cell phone or your computer because magnets can mess up the electronics inside. And really my only complaint with it would be that flex cable, because when you bend it and you let go, it does want to spring back a little bit on you. And I would have really liked to see that when you let go, not move at all. Now as long as you keep that in mind when you use it, it's not really going to be a problem. But as far as the one thing that really I didn't like right off the bat, it would be that cable. Now that being said, let's say you have a very tight situation, you can easily remove the cable, screw the magnetic base directly into the head, and then you're going to have a very short tool to work with. So you don't have to use the cable if you don't want to, and it is going to work exactly the same way. Now I do want to point out it is made in the USA and carries a 5-year warranty against manufacturer defects. So if you ever do have a problem with it, and it's within that time frame, they will fix or replace it for you free of charge. Now lastly, let's talk about soldering irons. Like I showed you in the video, if we did use the Portasol, it made it extremely portable because you have a second set of hands and then you have a wireless soldering iron that runs off butane gas. It's going to heat up extremely hot and it's going to do a great job. So when you couple these two together, you can get most wire repairs done in a few minutes. If you like this video, please click like. If you like my channel, please click subscribe. And thanks for watching.